Continuing chapter 4, where I left off, um, the next part of the book goes into the social construction of reality, also known as social constructionism. And this is a very important aspect of sociology. And this gets into detail about the theory of symbolic interactionism, which is one of the three main theories of sociology. If you recall, in chapter 1, I mentioned functionalism and conflict theory. Those are both two macro level theories which look at structure. But symbolic interactionism, or sometimes just called interactionism for short, is a micro level theory, which means it looks more at individuals and how we perceive things and how we give meaning to things. And the idea behind it is that our behavior is based largely upon the meaning that we give to certain objects and symbols, and that the meaning itself is socially constructed. For example, how do we determine what is great art and what is not? There's no objective standard for what is a great work of art. It's really, whatever a piece of art is worth is however much someone is willing to pay for it, basically. There are certain paintings that sell for millions and millions of dollars from like Van Gogh. But, Van Gogh actually was poor. He died a very poor person. He never was wealthy in his whole life. And yet now his paintings are priceless. No one really appreciated them at the time. So the meaning that we give to objects changes how we behave towards them. And that meaning itself can change over time. And this is what we mean by symbolic interactionism. It's the study of symbols, to put it basically, but more specifically, the meaning that we give to things and how we act on that meaning. And of course, meaning can differ from culture to culture. They talk about different types of greetings in different cultures, which have very different meanings. In American culture, I would not go and kiss somebody that I've just met for the first time, whereas an Italian may well do that. That would be considered very normal in their culture, because the meaning that they give to that act is much different from the meaning that I give to it. To me, that's like an intimate thing that I wouldn't do to a stranger, but to them, that's a greeting. That's considered polite. So the meanings that we give to things not only vary from culture to culture, but determine our behavior in a number of different ways. So that's a very, very important theory. It's good to know all of that stuff. It also goes on to talk about the theory of dramaturgy, or dramaturgical theory, which was invented by Goffman, also another very, very important, significant sociologist. Dramaturgical theory takes this idea of symbolic interactionism and roles, and helps to explain them by using the metaphor of a stage performance. The way he sees it is basically looking at people as actors, and that depending on whatever context we are in, whether we're in a classroom or whether we're at home, that context is the stage, and that we're all putting on a performance. Right now I'm putting on the performance of being a professor. So this is my front stage. I'm doing face work, as he calls it, which means, I'm trying to look normal and I'm not making stupid faces. I'm trying not to stumble over my words and things like that, trying not to look foolish. But we all do it. We all put on performances in the different roles that we take. We have props and costumes. For example, when you go into a doctor's office, you expect the doctor to walk in and have on a lab coat and a stethoscope. These are props that signify his status and his role as a doctor, and make his role believable. So, it's interesting to think about performance, think about life in terms of a performance on a stage with actors, as a good sort of metaphor for the way that we act, the way that we try to convey certain messages to others, because we are aware of the general other, we're aware of how others perceive us, and we try very hard not to make fools of ourselves, not to be embarrassed. So there's a lot of good concepts that he mentions in here about dramaturgy. The next one, it also goes on to ethnomethodology, which is another theory which was developed from symbolic interactionism. It's still kind of considered part of interactionism. Ethnomethodology is oftentimes considered a way of studying people very, very closely and specifically on their interactions. It was invented by a sociologist named Garfinkel, and his main way of studying this was to do what he called breaching experiments. Now, breaching experiments involve purposefully disrupting what's expected of you, and then observing how people react and how people try to save face, as Goffman would say, or how they try to keep the situation from being too awkward. An example of a breaching experiment, there's all kinds of examples, but just a few off the top of my head might be something like getting on an elevator and facing the wrong direction. That's kind of a simple one. Something like, going to a fancy restaurant dressed in shorts and flip-flops. It could be, standing very, very close to someone as you talk to them. They're going to feel uncomfortable. They're going to try to back away, In these types of situations, there's no, you're violating an unspoken norm, and so people get uncomfortable and they don't know how to react. And this is how Garfinkel proves that these unspoken norms exist, basically, that there are so many of them that govern our daily interactions that we're not even really aware of, and we don't become aware of them really until we violate them. And so breaching experiments are designed to sort of make people uncomfortable and put them in awkward situations where they don't know how to quite react because you're violating something that seems like common sense, So there's a lot of different examples of breaching experiments, and they can be pretty entertaining actually. If you've ever seen Borat, for example, he does a lot of these really funny videos where, he's basically doing breaching experiments. He goes into situations. It's Sacha Baron Cohen, the actor, but he's in this role as Borat. But he goes into these situations where he acts like a foreigner that doesn't understand the culture that he's in, and so he behaves in really awkward ways and says some obscene things sometimes, or just makes people generally feel uncomfortable, asks them ridiculous questions, or does crazy things. If you haven't seen it, you might want to look it up on YouTube. There's some clips on there of Borat, B-O-R-A-T, or do some Googling for some examples of breaching experiments, because your participation assignment this week is to do a breaching experiment of your own. This is going to be one of two options. The first option for the assignment is to do a breaching experiment. It can be anything you want, but don't break the law. Don't get yourself in trouble. Don't do anything too serious. You can do something silly or fun. It can be to a friend or a member of family or a complete stranger, but just don't get in trouble. Don't do anything serious. Just have fun with it, and then just write one page about describing what you did and what the person's reaction was to you, and that should be one page, typed, double-spaced, 12-point font, all that kind of stuff, and and be sure and read the section in the textbook about Garfinkel and ethnomethodology, and include about a paragraph or so in your page relating what you did to what Garfinkel's theory of breaching is and what it means, and how the people reacted and how that relates as well. So that's a kind of a fun assignment for you guys. There will be more detailed instructions in the assignment itself. If you have any questions about it, of course, you can email me. And I also have a second option for the participation assignment for those of you who may be uncomfortable doing a breaching experiment. It shouldn't be difficult to do if you do something just kind of silly and lighthearted. Like you go into a McDonald's and order a Whopper. That would be a breaching experiment. It'd probably be funny to see how they would react there. But if you're not comfortable doing something like that, you can also choose to do the second version of the participation assignment, which is to visit um, a a toy store or a shopping mall or some kind of retailer like this that sells clothes or toys, and I want you to observe um, the differences between the male and female sections of either clothing or the toy aisle or whatever it is that you can find, and look for evidence of how um, through the products in these stores they display signs of gender socialization. So, for example, if you go and find one section of the toy store that's full of all blue things for baby boys and then all pink things for baby girls, that would be a good example. Or the different kinds of imagery perhaps that's used in clothing stores for men and women, or toy stores, for example, the toy store section for the boys may be all army men, and then for the girls it's all Barbie dolls, something along those lines. Just go into a store and observe this and write one page just describing in detail what you've seen and how this relates to the process of gender roles and gender socialization. And again, there will be more detailed instructions on that in the assignment, which I will post on Friday. And this assignment, you have the whole weekend to do it. It will be due Sunday night at 10 p.m. So you'll have, I'll post it in the afternoon on Friday. So you'll have Friday evening, all day Saturday, and most of the day Sunday. So it shouldn't be a problem to get this done. And, this is, unlike the last week's assignment, this will be graded for the quality of your writing and what you write about. This is not just a completion grade. So out of the 12 points for this week, yeah, it will be based on the effort that you put into it. And, this is just a little exercise to get you to go out and practice some real sociology. Either make some observations in a store or perform your own breaching experiment, and then write about your your experiences. So I hope that's fun for you guys, and email me if you have any questions. And yeah, that's about all I've got for you. So thanks for watching, and have a good weekend.